This is Don't Get Me Started. This is a conversation about advertising. And here is your host, freelance creative director and creative circus department head, Dan Balser.
Yes, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. Thank you, first of all, so much for listening. I appreciate that very much. We are going to chat today with Tom Hamling, and Tom can go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and invite you, Tom, sitting across from me at the table. You can go ahead and check your email, go on your phone, because I've been doing this podcast for 12 friggin' years, and I know my own strengths and my own weaknesses at this point. I know what I'm capable of doing, and I know what I'm just not going to get around to. And part of it is I always get upset with myself when, in a rare case, I didn't do the intro during the podcast. I've got this cloud hanging over my head where I've got to go and sort of on my own record the intro. And I think Omid Farhang said to me, he goes, "You just wing this. You like do the intro with the guest sitting at the table." I'm like, yeah, the reason I do that is because I don't want one more thing to have to do. I can't stand editing this podcast. I think I've said this on the podcast for years. I can't stand it. I can't stand sitting there clicking my mouse for an hour. It's enough of my complaining. Tom Hamling is a writer, author, maker of things from Nashville, Tennessee. Currently group creative director at GSD&amp in Austin. He's produced award-winning work in 4 consecutive Super Bowls. I don't know when you're listening to this podcast. It's possible there will be a 5th by the time you've heard this. His Super Bowl work for Radio Shack was awarded at Cannes and the Andes and AICP. Right now at GSD&amp, he's also working on Dodge, Popeyes, Hilton Hotel, and avocados from Mexico. While the Super Bowl work for avocados has been awarded at D&AD Art Directors Club and AICP. In the past 5 years, his work has been called Best Spot of the Super Bowl by Ad Age, Time, and the Wall Street Journal. Let's let that settle in for a minute. That's pretty badass. Prior to his time at GSD&amp, Tom was vice president and creative director at RPA in Los Angeles, California, where he led work for Farmers Insurance, a piece of business he helped RPA pitch, win, and reinvent. That work is still running. That's Ruben Postar and Associates, for those of you who don't know what RPA stands for. Before RPA, Tom was a freelance writer at 72 and Sunny, spent 2.5 years at 180 LA creating global work for Adidas, Sony, Boost Mobile, and Bombay Sapphire. If you're American, he worked on Adidas. Before that, he spent almost 3 years at Wong Duty and almost 5 years at Lowe, New York, working on notable campaigns for Got Milk, Lego, Heineken, Sprite, and more. In 2007, Tom wrote and sold his first book. I think it's kind of cool to say your first book on your
first and probably last.
Let's just say it was his first book. TBD on the next book. Celebrity Vinyl is a satirical coffee table book based on his collection of albums recorded by famous actors, actresses, and athletes who probably had no business sitting in an audio studio recording an album. In 2011, Random House picked it up for a second printing. Tom's work has been recognized by Cannes Lions, One Show Pencils, Andes, Art Directors Cubes, Webbies, AICP, FWA Awards, and Obies. It's also been featured in Creativity's Best of the Year, the Communication Arts Annual, Archive Magazine, New York Times, and the Guinness Book of World fucking Records. I just read that for the first time. Don't know what that's about. 2 pieces of her work are in the permanent collection at the Museum of Modern Art in New York City, and he was a first student on the Creative Circus Board of Advisors. He's been to 47 states. He now lives in... what?
Maine, Vermont, and New Hampshire.
Maine, Vermont, and New Hampshire.
Eluding me.
You could hit all those in one trip.
Exactly.
He lives in Nashville. He works in Austin, and there are 2 pages of awards that I'm not going to go through. You can find them on TomHamling.com. Thank you, listeners, for sitting through the intro. Tom, thank you for being patient, and thank you for coming back to visit school. And welcome, man. Welcome to the microphone.
It's good to be here. First podcast.
First ever podcast.
Yeah, so if I choke or if I blow it, or let me know. Holler. Or edit it out. One of the 2.
Okay. I promise you will. I promise you, listeners, that you will not ever know of the episodes of choking and failing, which, you know what? It's kind of a pretty good theme, right? I mean, I think that people don't realize when they start this career, they listen to this long list, how many times, and I'm saying this with just only the fucking most respect ever, how many times you have failed and how many times your work has failed. And listeners didn't just see this massive furrowing of the brow nod of understanding at that comment from Tom on the other side of the table. So talk a little bit with me about just the struggle of getting to good work, because here's the reason I want to say that, is that I don't want this to be always a sort of slap each other on the back love fest of like success and wonderfulness that happens in advertising, because that sort of doesn't do justice to the struggle and the reality of the job that we have.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is, I mean, the talk that I just gave to the students had a heavy dose of reality in it, because I didn't want to sugarcoat that things are all, sugar and lollipops. I mean, it's a hard business in that you better be resilient, and you better know that, every step along the way, your stuff's going to die. You're going to have a CD that hates it. You're going to have an account person that hates it. A client's going to test it. They're going to hate it. A focus group's going to kill it. Finally, you get something that you like, but then the director's got a problem with this. Like, every step along the way, you better be fighting for that idea, and it's not easy.
Have you changed fundamentally and philosophically in your mind and approach what you ultimately think your job as a creative is, or as a copywriter is, because of that reality?
Well, it's changed a lot as I've gotten older, right? So now I'm more of a creative, I creative direct more, right? And so I always say the job of a creative director is, because I was talking to some kids at the high school, and it's like, my job is gutter guards on a bowling alley, right? As a creative director. So throw the idea down the bowling lanes, let it bounce off this one, and just keep getting those gutter guards a little tighter and tighter until you come up with something that's good. But, when I was starting out, it was just, you had to go pencils never down, because you would show 20 scripts to get one maybe, and then the maybe would get tacked up on your CD's board, and, it would die for whatever reason, and you better come back with 20 more, or it's just kind of pass you by.
Right. I asked the question, that's a great answer, because I think that your job and role obviously changes as your title and your responsibilities change. But I'm talking about also like the notion that we came from the same school, virtually, I mean, pretty close to it. And there's always this emphasis on the best idea is always winning. And we think that our job is basically to come up with award-winning work all the time. And I think that as my career progressed, I realized that actually that my job is not that. My job is to be able to do that again, and to be able to come back with something different, and to be able to basically have enough for a meeting and have come up with options.
Yeah, sometimes.
I mean, sometimes it's just a matter of just, getting stuff out there, and not necessarily. I just think that there is this assumption that like that the best idea always wins.
Oh God, I don't think that's the case at all. I mean, I feel like, so many good ideas die on a testing room floor. So many good ideas die in a CD's office. So many, and you never really know until something stays alive. And so you got to keep the beach ball in the air, and I would say that in 2018, as timelines are shrinking and budgets are shrinking, sometimes you just got to throw a bunch of ideas up there, and it's moving so fast that if you just can keep it afloat, that you can turn it into something hopefully good.
How often has a creative director killed one of your favorite ideas? I mean, how often does that happen?
Oh, well, I mean, a ton, right? I mean, that's a rite of passage. But I mean, that's also a lesson in, well, don't be so precious about this idea. And if they don't like it for a certain reason, don't bring it back to the next. That's like a huge pet peeve, right? Coming back to the same meeting, like, are you sure you don't like this? Maybe evolve it and say, well, I know that you gave me this feedback on this last time, so I took this approach on it this time. Evolve it and see if you can keep it alive that way.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, your ideas die constantly.
Right. So what's the best way for a new hire to endear himself or herself to you? What do you kind of want out of somebody who's reporting to you? What kind of traits do you value?
Raise the hand, I guess. Raise the hand, pencil never down, right? So it's like, if you want to make something good, like, it's not just going to be like, here's a script, it's done, I like it. Oh, you don't like it? Well, then I'm done. Like, that's kind of not the way advertising's ever worked. But in 2018, I think it's even more important to like raise your hand and ask for the brief that nobody wants, or ask for the thing that everybody's failing on. Because then if you have a horrible assignment that nobody wants to work on, and you actually do a good job on it, well, it's like, well, give them the medium assignment, give them the big opportunity. So the only way to get the good stuff is if you work hard on the bad stuff.
Yeah. All right, so I'm looking at your resume, and you've made some moves. It was I did it in reverse chronologically, but it's low, Wong Duty, 180, 72, RPA, GSD&amp, roughly. How do you know when it's time to make that move? What's the sort of thing that has pushed you to change something throughout the career?
Maybe when you're feeling stale, or when you're feeling like you've kind of been doing the same thing over and over, right? So at least, I mean, I can only speak from personal experience, but
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah. The first move was I worked at, I think when I started at Amirati, Pure Slinches, which became Low Worldwide, which became Low New York, which became...
right, okay. I forgot that Low was Amirati. Okay.
I had 4 business cards for the same job.
Yeah, that
maybe
happened.
5. That was like a 1,300 person shop when I started, like in 1999, like .com era. We had like 25 floors in giant Midtown building. And I had been there, and I remember thinking after like 2 or 3 years, and I'd produced some work that I thought was okay, and that it was probably time to mix it up and try to go to a place that felt a little less big and corporate. So that was the impetus.
Was there something about the size itself that felt that pushed you or felt wrong, or what was it about?
I think it's that I'd work.
You just wanted to change a pace, or what?
Wanted to change a pace and different clients, right? Okay. At a certain point, like all your stuff, like I was producing, which in retrospect is good, producing really polished, finished TV spots, like Got Milk spots, that big budgets and comedy and stuff like that. And at the time, it felt like, Cliff Freeman's doing all this like low budget, janky. It's so funny. Like I want to be doing stuff like that.
Pizza.
Yeah, isn't it? Yeah, isn't it funny how I felt like our stuff felt too big and too polished, and it was time to get roll up the sleeves a little bit and try to go somewhere that was goofier.
Yeah, and smaller places tend to be independently owned and be able to take more risk creatively and do things that are a little bit less, within the rails, sort of safe and tested to the nth degree.
Totally, yeah. There weren't a lot of focus groups at Wong Duty.
Focus groups. We always call them focus groups.
That makes sense.
Here's the thing. I almost grab the mic in the forum to explain to students what testing means. What testing means is that you're going to put a piece of speculative creative, possibly a storyboard or an animatic or some sort of rough version of a commercial in front of people who are neither trained nor professionally qualified to judge creative work.
Sure.
And give their reaction when asked for reaction that they are
paid for reaction. $50 a Snickers bar and a Coke.
Right. So you're asked to say something about something that in the real world, in the wild, you would only be consuming and digesting. You would never be consuming and then commenting on. So you're asking, so then multi-million people's careers are resting on some frankly unqualified person's opinion. And that's not cool.
No, it's weird. And I think the best clients, testing's kind of a reality. And for some things, I think the best clients take the learnings of testing and then use those learnings to kind of like, okay, well, here's what we heard kind of consistently. How can we do whatever? The worst of the clients will take testings and say, this is a matter of fact, and this is exactly what they said, so this is what we're making.
Right.
And you don't want that. You want, if anything, make it a barometer for what the work should be, but don't let it define the work.
Yeah, and it can show you something like, oh, God, nobody noticed that that's like a totally sexist comment. Like, can we rewrite that line? Okay, great. Someone saved us on that one. But other than that, it's sort of like, I don't know. I'm just not a big fan. Oh, wow, look at that question. I wrote this way before your presentation. What elements do you think combine to create great versus good work? What are the elements that make work great? Because there's subtlety in greatness. What are the elements that combine to make something great?
I don't know.
What are the ingredients in your experience? Only speak from your personal experience.
I will. Effort, and that sounds dumb, but like if you ever show up on set and we're like, well, the director's going to take it from here, and I can just sit at craft service table and whatever, it's like you're not going to end up with work that you like. You have to be, every step along the way, trying to poke holes in something and trying to make a joke better, and that joke's going to die and a lawyer's going to kill it.
Constantly making it.
So I would make, and I still do, like teams have to have a doc that they bring to set that is the kind of alt doc, right? Alt jokes, alt lines, things that they're thinking, things that could go bad that, that you could have some forethought about. This is going to come up. How are we going to solve it? What are some alt lines that this person can say? Because I think, a really good director will kind of work with some of that, do some of that on their own. But again, you don't want to make it purely on the director.
Yeah, you don't want to rely on ad lib.
No, exactly. So sometimes you show up on set and it's like, hey, here's the, and I always call it the things I'm thinking about doc. And it's just a train of thought that happens in between when you sell an idea and when you make an idea of all the things that might come up and all the things you can do to kind of make that idea better.
Very cool.
And so that's something that I always kind of mandate with the really young teams, and if they get a little bit older and they know me well enough, then they kind of I've already thought about that. But for young teams, it was always a good lesson of like, this isn't just a vacation. You're not just staying at a nice hotel in LA for 2 weeks. Like, we're here to make something good.
Yeah, absolutely. How often does it happen that something off that dock ends up
100%
being the net that catches the foul ball, that wins it?
Every time.
Yeah.
Every time. I mean, every time something off that document makes the spot.
It's interesting, too. You're talking about this. The analogy I was thinking in my mind is I'll often say, don't decide what to do, decide what to keep. So a student will say to me, it's like, should I do this or should I do that? I'm like, you need to do both of them to make that decision. And television execution is the same way. It's like you're imagining it's going to be this way, so you go on the set and you do what you imagine. It's nothing ever happens the way you think it's going to happen. So you need to have that extra content. I've never heard that before. That's really cool.
But what's interesting too is something that takes a little while to learn, and it's sometimes uncomfortable if you're in it. But when you're on set, sometimes you're the client. Meaning the production company is looking at you as a client, the same, and you got to remember how you look at your clients. So then you got to realize, okay, well, I'm putting on, I'm trying to make, what my paying client wants to make, but I want it to be awesome too. But I also understand that this production company, this director, they've got a vision and their point of view. So you better be ready to be open to some total curveball that makes an idea better or makes an idea worse or whatever. Sure. You have to be able to. There has to be some give and take in that,
and not too much ego involved. So have you ever looked at any of your work or the work that you've been supervisor on and say, damn, I wish we had a do-over on that one?
I feel like I hate everything that I've made. Yeah, I mean, because you see the faults, right? You see that like, oh, this joke could have been a little bit better, or hate's a strong word. I don't hate it. But I can see things where I'm like, I wish this had literally been like 5 frames shorter here, that reaction, because I feel like that would have made a funnier comedic moment between this and real nitpicky stuff.
I think that's why you're successful. Do you ever look at your work and think, do you like it?
Oh, man. Yeah, sometimes. I'll tell you what, sometimes it's nice to look back on something that you hadn't seen in a really long time. And it takes you back to, oh man, I loved that partner and that was a fun production and I can't believe we got away with that. But after really sitting in the edit and seeing something 700 times, you're kind of like, I need to take a little break from this. And you're ready to put it away for a while.
You can overdo it too.
Yeah.
So who are the best creative directors you've worked for and why were they great or important to your development?
Man, that's tough. I've worked for a lot of good people.
And so I'm going to come back to that.
Yeah.
But I want to ask you this. Did you ever look at, so in your presentation, for those of you who didn't see it, in your presentation you'd shown this old list from when you were in school of cities you wanted to work in, agencies you wanted to work for, which I do think students that are doing their homework are doing that kind of thing. Was there ever a consideration when you were younger to say, I want to work for this person? Like, this is the guy I want to go, the woman who I want to go work for? Or was it always sort of the brand name agency? And the reason I'm asking you the question about traits of your creative directors that were good is just to give young people starting out sort of the framework of how to kind of evaluate the boss that's going to be their boss. You know what I mean? Like, what was it about the creative directors that you liked? What was it about them that was valuable?
Geez. Well, I mean, as far as, I don't think I ever necessarily wanted to work for a specific person, but I feel like when I was coming out of school, the creative directors I wanted to work for, their name was on the door.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So like Dan Wyden, Jeff Good, Wyden, Goodby Silverstein, whatever. And so you kind of, Crispin Porter, Boguski, you knew that they were already there. Their name was usually on the door. But as far as like a specific, like they run this group, and on these accounts, I don't think I knew that much. Yeah. I don't feel like I did. I remember writing letters, like cold letters, and sending a 700-pound package to them.
A real portfolio.
Yeah, a real portfolio. Off the top of my mind, Tracy Wong comes to mind because I guess he taught me to slow down and think.
Interesting.
If that makes sense.
Is he a designer?
He was an art director by trade. And I'm a copywriter by trade. And, I had come from, again, that big New York agency, and I went there and worked on some stuff that was really hard and kind of technical and stuff like that. But he was very thoughtful in looking at work, and we always like sprinkle a little wisdom on. Like Tracy would come in and like wouldn't be involved in a project at all and just be like, well, what if you did this and whatever? And like, God damn it.
Right.
Like he just made
How
that.
did you know that?
He made that better, like with just a little bit of.
So that's just talent, though, pretty much, isn't it?
It is, but it's also like big picture and thinking. He always did the listen with an open mind, which is good, and make sure that when somebody's talking at a table that you don't just wait for them to finish so you can put in what you are going to say, hear what they're saying, and try to use that to make the work better. And I'm like, that's a good lesson for a young creative. I was 4 years out of school. I didn't know anything, so to have him, kind of at that point in my career, I think was pretty valuable. And I think you learned as much from bad creative directors as you do from good. He was just, he was really good. He was what I needed at that point in my career.
It's really interesting. There's a theme
and being nice. That's the biggest.
He's a nice guy.
He's a super nice guy. But I mean, you be a nice creative director. There's a lot of creative directors out there with a lot of bluster and anger and ego and stuff like that. Like nobody wins in that.
No.
Nobody wins in that scenario.
Fear is not normally a motivator.
No.
All of this is really interesting. I remember seeing this thing for 5 seconds on TV. It was all about the nature of God. This is heavy.
Okay.
But the whole theory in this thing, my takeaway was that the concept of creation is still happening.
The concept
Like
of creation.
evolution and creation are an ongoing process that we're like in the middle of.
Oh, for
like
sure.
Things are done baking. Creation isn't over. And you keep talking about being alert and aware on set, being alert and aware in the editing bay. You're talking about creative directors who taught you to pay attention to the flow of possibility in a moment, in a meeting, right? And I think that it's really important. I think it's really hard. It's a developing empathy, but it's also developing a patient view that things are always evolving, things are always changing.
God, yeah. I mean, if you think about the political atmosphere right now in the world, it's black and white. It's not black. I mean, there's grayness in there. That things can continually change and get better. It's not. This isn't the right answer. That's not the wrong answer.
Yeah, I have a theory about how that started.
Huh.
And I don't want to talk about politics on the podcast because I'm not going to take a position on this. But I remember a moment when George W. Bush was president, and they were going to invade Iraq. And he comes on TV, and I'd never heard a president say this, done this before, because France was resisting this invasion of Iraq, and he says, "You're either with us or you're against us." And I was like, "Wait a minute, that's a false choice."
Yeah,
that's a false choice. I can be against it, but willing to discuss it. I can be for it, but understand the implications of it. And I think it changed the rhetoric to us and them, and it hasn't gone away since that moment.
Interesting.
And I think you're right. I think that being malleable, flexible, open-minded, and if you have something you have to say, just write it down and hold on to it. And I'll bet you in 10 minutes it won't be as relevant as what you've just heard.
Totally, and it goes beyond advertising. I mean, I'm a parent. Childhood is happening as we speak. It's not like I have a marriage is happening as you speak. You have to continue to work on things.
It, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Otherwise, it's not like, oh, I'm married, it's over. Like, no, we're still married. It's great.
Right. No, that takes work. I've been married 25 years. It takes work. What personal trait of yours, what is it about you that has served you best so far in your career? What do you think it is that's been your sort of secret weapon?
I don't know.
For real?
No. Is that bad? Is
it bad that you don't know, or is it bad you don't have one? No, it's not bad.
It's bad that I don't know. I try to be nice to people. I think niceness matters. I mean, that's such a cliche. Sure. I guarantee that that's the most uninteresting answer to that question that you've had. But I do feel that
I'd say it's definitely the most uninteresting. No, it's perfectly fine.
But I don't know. I mean, trying to be nice and optimistic. I guess
optimism's hard.
I think if you don't have optimism, it's going to be a short shelf life for advertising if you're not optimistic.
If you don't believe that you can get it done better.
Because again, horrible things are going to happen every single day.
Yeah.
So if you're going to let that get you down, then good luck in this industry.
Horrible things are going to happen every day is something that I think is hard to understand when you're younger, and it's really true.
I hope that came across to them when I talked to them.
Yeah. So you said never stop making a lot, and I think that that's really important too. So this awesome, hilarious book of album covers from what's it called again? What's that?
The Celebrity Vinyl?
Celebrity Vinyl, right. So do you have things now that you do outside of work that keep you sane or fulfilled?
I always feel like I've got some projects in the hopper of things that I'm thinking about. Right. And it doesn't have to always be something like that, but...
Children.
children are a thing that takes some time, but I mean, anything. I like when I go to the beach, I look for shark's teeth. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
you always have to have some kind of
Definitely.
collection. I got a gazillion collections and 100 side projects I want to do.
What do you collect?
I like shark's teeth. I do collect shark's teeth. I have a pretty big jar of those.
A lot of shark's teeth in Nashville.
There's a ton of them. In the creek beds. No, they usually you get them at the beach.
Down in the creek.
Down in the creek. I go across the farm. I like stones. I like sticks. I like to do basically nature is kind of my thing that I get into.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So knowing what you know now, if you could go back to the day you walked out of Creative Circus in 1999, what would you whisper to young Tom? Knowing what you know now, what would you tell yourself?
I don't think I'd change anything, if that's what you mean. I don't think I would, because I think everything kind of happens for a reason. There's a reason I didn't get my dream job right out of school, you know. But I don't know if anybody did, you know, that I graduated with. I just think, you know, you come to school here and you think, oh, I'm going to go here and I'm going to work on this account, I'm going to do whatever, and half the time those cards don't get dealt that way, right?
So don't ever do it. I mean, I see it from my position in my job now, where people go out and get the quote unquote dream job, and those are the people who are consistently marginally less happy than the people who didn't get that first.
Yeah,
because I think they think it's going to be something else.
I think you're right. I think going and not getting the job that you thought you were going to get right off the bat is probably a good thing, because it makes you work harder for the next thing, and then the next one, the next one, the next one. So I don't think I would change anything. I don't know what I would whisper. Maybe some lotto numbers or gambling bets or something.
Right.
Like
buy Apple.
Buy Apple.
Right.
It would be basically the Back to the Future sports almanac that that Biff had.
Right.
God, I wanted that almanac. That almanac so bad.
So great. Well, thanks so much for talking.
Thanks for having me.
Really
It was good.
What's the URL for GSD&amp? I should have gotten that homework at the beginning.
I've got to believe it's GSD&amp.com.
Yeah, you should definitely use the internet to find that. You can always reach me at Dan's podcast.
If it's not.
Mac.com. If it's not, the internet's broken. Make sure to like the Facebook page. I'll have links on there. So I'll do all the homework for you. Just go to facebook.com/DGMS podcast. And I'll be back in a couple more weeks with another conversation like this one. Tom, thanks so much, man. It's great to meet you.
Awesome to meet you.
Listeners, thanks for listening. See you then. Bye.
You've got it dialed in.
That's all it is.